Holding space, eh? You're a professional space holder.
I guess you could say that.
I would say that, 100%. Mm. I think that I don't know if I've ever actually had anybody hold space for me the way that you do.
Really?
Yeah. And I think that attests to and like goes into your belief that like not everybody truly holds space when they think that they might be holding space. Mm-hmm. Ignorance is bliss in that situation for those folks, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But what do you mean when it comes to actually holding space for somebody? What does that look like? How do you classify or structure that space? It's so open.
Is this in like a one-on-one setting, or is this in general, like in day-to-day?
I'd say in general, day-to-day.
Okay. It shifts and changes.
Okay. How so?
I guess meeting the person where they're at and understanding how deep they want to go. When it comes to holding space, I follow the concepts of nonviolent communication.
Okay.
To the extent that if I'm truly in a space where I'm holding space rather than having like a friendly conversation or getting to know somebody.
Yeah.
Holding space is when you essentially empathize with the other person.
Yeah.
And take away your belief system or judgment or expectation of what you believe they should do. Once you place an expectation or projection of how that person should show up,
yeah,
you're now attempting to control the way that they're living their life. It's manipulation.
Holding space for people is actually supposed to be being present with them without your biases.
Exactly.
Who'd have thunk it? That's bonkers.
Exactly.
So you use a very like a stern word to describe that though, manipulation.
It is.
Yes.
Unconscious manipulation.
I was just about to ask that. Like, does it still hold the same malevolence behind it, even when people don't know that they're doing that? Because they're acting out because they just want what's best for other people. And they're trying to hold those higher expectations for those people because they love them. They don't realize, though, that love is conditional, mm-hmm. right? Once that you remove those conditions for love, that's when somebody and yourself can grow, I think. That's what's been happening a lot recently.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate you, bud.
I love that for you.
Yes. With that, coming back to that harsh word, manipulation.
Yeah.
You freed those people from the biases of my mind. It's like, oh, for a second, I want to be like they're manipulators if they're trying to get somebody to hold them to an expectation. Because I've been guilty of that. I've been in a situation where I've held even my clients to a higher expectation to their own fault, mm-hmm. to my own fault as a therapist, or a pseudo-therapist, I suppose you could say. When I said that you hold space differently for me, and have held space differently for me, it was feeling truly being witnessed, and not being held to any standards. That was the biggest difference. And it was almost like coincidental, very serendipitous and synchronistic, that after that had happened for me, I just started seeing a bunch of quotes and content and material and audio and everything around the idea of showing up for somebody is not showing up for yourself. Just showing up for them allows them to grow. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Would you mind telling me about a time in your life when you have had somebody hold space for you in that way, where it was freeing rather than imprisoning?
So for the last 2 years, I've worked with a incredible, absolutely the most pure human being I think I've ever met in my life. And I've been working with him pretty frequently for about 2 years. Yeah, so for about 2 years, I have been working with I refer to him as a guide. He works with individuals for healing capacity.
Nice.
And he is the most conscious, genuine, pure, kind, open, loving,
I can feel the gratitude.
joyful, incredible. Oh, I'm gonna cry. This man has absolutely provided me the opportunity to experience an entire different reality than what I have lived through for, at that point, 27 years.
Did you meet this person simultaneously, like when you were saw the Heal documentary, coming out of Lyme disease? Is this all serendipitously at the same time?
Yes. So it
Tell
was
us
around.
About that.
It was. Well, I was very sick.
Wheelchair ridden sick, not lucky to be alive sick.
Yes. Very grateful and blessed to still be here.
Glad you're here too.
Thank you.
Yes, of course.
So, yeah, I started getting really, really, really sick a couple years back, and it progressed very rapidly to the extent I was a personal trainer, so I was very, very, very active, exercising every day, at the gym every day. So when they progressed rapidly, and it really put me down for the count.
Mm-hmm.
And through a several month time span, I lost the ability to walk, to eat. I was mostly spending a majority of my time in bed. And when I needed to go to the restroom, I would be carried or walked over there, or whatever the case.
Mm-hmm.
And it got to the point where my body was shutting down. I had a nonstop tremor. My whole body, my head would nonstop shake.
Wow.
And then the seizures started. So I think it was the third or fourth seizure. They kept me overnight, and I looked at my dad and I started saying my goodbyes. I said, I'm not waking up. Dad, I feel myself. I am dying. I am dying. I love you. And I basically said a couple of my wishes, and we cried, and I fully surrendered to the spirit of the universe without realizing what I was doing at the time. And it was that week that I came across the movie Heal, which we just recently started to watch. And then everything started to shift and change. A Lyme physician fell into my lap. I started getting connected with energy work and energy healing and spirituality and consciousness. And it was in that time frame that I initially met the guide that I work with now. Got connected a couple times, and it wasn't until about 6 or 8 months later that him and I really started doing one-on-one work. So his capacity to truly and authentically hold space without judgment and with absolute love for anything that you share with him is who I am. I guess I sort of model myself off of that.
I know what you do for a living. Let's talk a little bit about that, though, because that is exactly what brought you into your current profession, correct? Was that transformation for yourself and realizing that you can not only do that for yourself, but help others facilitate that too?
I'm the founder of a business called Elevation Experience, which we are going through a rebrand right now, which will be coming soon. I don't know when this video will be released, but it will be coming soon. Tentatively March of 2023. So when it came to the time frame where I was healthy enough to start going back to work and working with people again, I looked at my business partner at the time and was essentially like, well, how do I go back to doing what I was doing? How do I go back and not use the absolute life-changing wisdom and experience and knowledge that I've cultivated over the last year or 2 years? How do I move forward with that? And it synchronistically aligned very, very, very well with who I was as a child. I was always very open, very, I would communicate with ancestors, loved ones, spirits that had transitioned. I would put myself to bed at night by creating balls of energy and sort of like piecing them together and making them into a choo-choo train, and I would play with the balls of energy flying across my room.
True alchemist. I love this. This is incredible. So you've been working with energy for a long time, whether you knew it or not. At what point, like, I do want to come back to ovulation and what you do with energy work, but a great question just popped into my head of like, you were born into the alchemy and the energy work and having that ability and having that natural gift. Where did the separation come from? Was it just the human life as is? And I'm not surprised to hear that it was like a revolutionizing conscious awakening coming back to spirit that got you readjusted and acclimated back to your gift. But like, where did the separation come from? As much as you're willing to go into depth with.
I grew up in a Catholic church.
All right. That's it.
Well, it started out in kindergarten. The earliest days that I can remember, it started out in kindergarten, where I would connect. My great-grandfather would come in very frequently, almost daily, and spend time with me. And I would think it was the coolest, most fascinating experience, because to me it was so playful. It was so, I would put myself to bed at night making choo-choo trains out of balls of energy. So it was fascinating and innocent and playful and so filled with joy and love. I didn't realize at such a young age that spiritual connection or mediumship or the unseen non-physical world created such a high level of fear for the common person. So as a child, I would get excited to tell people about my grandfather, and I would tell my friends that would come over, or I would go over there and hang out with them and say, hey, you want to connect with my grandpa? They'd say, yeah, and then it would they would try to go to bed that night and it would just shatter their ability to sleep, because now they're thinking about who's in the room with them.
Oh my goodness.
So they would tell their parents would tell my parents would tell me to stop telling people about this, and it was so innocent, just genuinely trying to protect me.
Yeah.
But it cultivated a level of fear around the non-physical world that did not yet exist for me.
They weren't giving you the space to grow. They were placing their expectations on you. Conditional learning. No, just like at that point in time, like suppressing that gift. Yes, it scared people and things like that, but like it's like all coming back together. I like this. Keep going.
It was nothing intentional to make me small or close me down or anything of that nature. It's just parents that have a child that come into the world that are awake to what's not physically there, because nothing is actually physical.
Touché.
Is scary, especially when you're involved in a paradigm of belief systems that view that as evil.
So true.
And it runs in my family. So I have a couple cousins that are very open. I have one cousin in particular who's been very monumental in my ability to grow into the senses that I work with. My grandmother and couple aunts, it's generational. It's very much so. But I also have the belief system that it's available to everybody. It's just a matter of how turned on or turned off the dial is, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does. And I think that the more, like we learned a couple weeks ago, the more you tune into your heart space, that's a completely different intuition. Tuning into that lately for me I have been able to feel my grandmother's presence with greater clarity. And
ooh.
We can talk about this.
I want to hear about this.
Well, on so many levels, ever since my grandma Balduff has passed away, I've been able to recall her essence and like hear her voice, feel her energy. And I get the little kisses that I told you about. And it's almost like I get to pull her and my grandfather now because he was very separate there since he'd passed. But now I can kind of tune into him a little bit better too, and my great-grandparents. I'm sorry to hear that you were felt shamed out of using that gift that you were given when you were a little girl and practicing that. But I'm so glad that you've been able to come back to it as an adult now, after you've had a conscious revelation, and that you're helping others lead their way to that as well. And that, to me, is just a beacon of light in the darkness storms of this life. Tell us a little bit more about Elbow Lace, because I did get off the beaten track, but bringing it back. I know that it's a very conscious community, but like I said, I know what you do for a living. Please tell us a little bit more about the specifics of what your clients and community do on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. Because that's important work what you all are doing. And I love the fact that something like what you have built exists for people to go to. It's a yellow brick road in a lot of ways. What kind of bricks are on that yellow brick road for the peeps?
So the Elevation Experience is an online conscious women's community or femme-identifying persons community. And we focus on providing you the riverbanks for self-exploration, personal development, mindfulness, and multi-dimensional wellness. Go ahead.
Riverbanks for the facilitating so much transformation in everything that you've just said. Is this all in person? Is this all online? Is this a good mixture of both?
Great question. It has been, for the last 2 years, it has been completely virtual. Okay. So everything has taken place on a platform called Mighty Networks. Nice. And we connect in, we'll use Zoom, we'll use live stream. It's essentially a conscious spiritual social media page that it's morphed into that provides you what we refer to as sacred libraries. So each sacred library has on-demand energy healing meditations, guided or active meditations, breathwork classes, intentional movement classes, educational, informative, empowering guest speakers, and it all focuses on mindfulness, multidimensional wellness, taking into consideration the knowing that you are more than just your physical body. We're not machines. We're not little pieces that work.
We're energy.
We're energy, yeah, and we're systems.
Yeah,
so
with spectrums.
Exactly. Everything works in systems. Everything works in sequence isn't the appropriate word, but everything, the mind, the body, the spirit, the heart, everything is in synchrony with each other. When it's out of sync, when it's disharmonious or discoherent, that's when you start to see states of dis-ease or discomfort or pain or disturbances of that nature. So what we focus on in the community, or what I focus on one-on-one, working with individuals virtually. So I work with individuals all over the United States and the other continents, as well as in person. So I'm partnered with a local yoga studio that I see in-person clientele from. And I'm also partnered with a local chiropractic clinic that I am beginning to see in-person client base from as well. So
it's incredible. When you were mentioning the sacred libraries, that's hundreds of hours of content.
Yes. It is.
That's incredible.
Thank you.
Encourage everybody to go check out your website. Could you please tell them where they might be able to find some of this material?
It is currently, it's going to be changing in the next couple of months, but as of current, you can visit www.theelevelationexperience.com. Hard word to spell, big reason we're rebranding. So I can give you the wording and
probably just put it in a little tag. We'll probably put it right there. Being held in the space of having expectations is really the type of transformation that got me to the point of needing a breaking point, of having the no expectations witnessing of whole space holding, if that makes any sense at all. being put in other people's boxes for so long and living up to expectations that I thought aligned with my values, and they did for the most part, but still holding those masks up to some regard even after I've discarded them, right? Not truly clearing those blocks subconsciously, holding up those expectations, being put into a free space, no mask. Unconditional love came up. Like inner childhood tendencies, emotions, like just energy came up. It's beautiful. When you're given space to grow. Space implies growth. It's getting outside of that comfort zone, which is a tiny little space. A little desert, if you ask me. No rain. But I want to thank you for the space that you've held for me.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate it, and I will always be grateful for that time that you've shared with me.
You're very welcome. Well, you've held space for me too.
It's a pleasure.
It's mutual. It's symbiotic empowerment.
I almost jinxed you on that. Oh my god. I think that is... So what? Go ahead.
What do you focus on when you hold space? How do you prepare? How do you embody? How do you...
It completely changed after you held space for me.
Really?
I held expectations for people, my clients, everybody else. It was very rare for me to just walk into it and with total acceptance and unconditional love. I really, 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 really had to have a clear-cut attachment commitment to some sort of being with you. Whether you were my parents, and even then, that would, I would hold expectations on them most of the time when it came to needing to hold space. After I got put in that free space, I was like, that's invaluable. I need to be able to give that to everybody all the time. Well, who the hell am I to think that I can hold an expectation on somebody else right now? When you told me I don't give people advice, I understood that on a level that was so deep within me, and it unlocked another level of humbleness. It was a concept that seemed so familiar to me after so many of my studies and like resolutions and values, but I still found myself giving people advice. And I don't know if it's because I'm working with these clients, I've got 10, 15 years on them sometimes. I learn just as much from them as they do from me.
I was gonna say, who's to say, even though we're programmed to believe we're the elder, who's to say that that child or any child that comes into your life wasn't meant to come into your life because you had a lesson to learn. You had an awareness to deepen into. Just because age is higher does not mean we are wiser. And when you bring yourself into the embodiment of understanding that every person you come in contact with is a droplet of creator energy, we are no higher or superior. We are no lower or less than. I am you and you are me, and we're separate. We're also one.
Only separate through what the veil can see. What you can see through the veil.
The physical veil or the non-physical veil? Because non-physical veil, our energies are touching.
Good, we're all day. I hear you so loudly when you say that we are not meeting anybody higher, lower, wiser, dumber than, just because of age, anything like that. We are droplets of the creator. That was epic. Just like being a droplet of the creator. Do you feel like a tether back to that source? And what do you do to purposely hold space for yourself? Because I think that holding space for myself is just as important as being able to hold space for other people. That's another thing that changed. When you gave me that free space, not only was I like gonna give others that free space, unconditional love, because it just feels better, period. It's so much more fluid. But then I realized I had not been holding myself in a free space, mentally, physically, in so many ways too. how do you practice holding yourself in your free space?
That is an amazing question. And that is actually a major focus of what I hold the riverbanks for my client base or my community members to learn how to do. Because that gets into emotional intelligence and your ability to become the observer of what you're thinking and feeling and experiencing, rather than be so involved in those emotions or thoughts or belief systems that you become them. So it's this fluid experience, and I'm human, so I'm still gonna have my human highs and lows, and I'm gonna have my human emotions and human experience and human drives, and but there is, it's this, it has developed very intentionally, and it has taken dedication and time and practice and a very profound level of commitment. But I'm in a space now where usually, regardless of what's happening, I can maintain a embodied state as the observer, the witness of what's taking place, while still allowing myself to fully surrender into the emotions or experience or pain or frustration that might be in the present moment, because it's not always going to be joyful. But it's your choice whether you choose to suffer.
Suffering is a choice. Most cases.
I was going to say,
In
I'm
most
not going to
cases.
make a bold statement,
Yeah.
but in many cases, suffering, well, the Eckhart Tolle quote that we discussed earlier,
Exactly.
suffering is necessary until you realize that it is unnecessary.
I was talking with my clients today specifically about how to bring yourself down from an escalated point and using some dialectical skills around that. But I just was like, okay, these skills are very useful. Yes, pause, take a step back, observe, proceed mindfully. My favorite still, the stop skill. I just told them, if you're angry about something, use time. Think about it. Literally, if you're at the emotional state where you're capable of still having rational thought, do your best to think, am I going to be angry about this in 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months? And if any of those are a no, if you're not even going to be upset about this in 2 weeks, why are you angry about it right now? Because most of them are reacting to their environment. And rather than recognizing that they do have a lot of safe space where they're at, they're programming themselves into suffering by entertaining that cycle of pain. And it's hard not to want to just sit and shake them and tell them that that's a lot of what's going on, but that, as you know, is trauma work. It's very difficult to shake that essence of fighter, like, from the body. Your ability recently, and your ability to describe observing yourself going through those things and having, even, I'm sure, as a human, trauma responses throughout those days. Do you have any advice for people as they might be trying to deepen their level of mindfulness as an observer? Do you have any advice?
Can I actually go back onto what you just said?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a very, it's more of a Western approach to mental health. Versus what I work with. So you mentioned you can't just shake it out. That is actually how I tell my clients to work with it. And that is how I personally work with anger or frustration, is you shake out the nervous system, because we are primal animals. So to talk yourself out, to gaslight yourself and say, oh, that's not going to matter. Why am I angry right now? I shouldn't be angry right now. That's self-gaslighting. It's not allowing the feedback loop of the nervous system to actually complete and that experience to be brought fully all the way through. So a method that I use daily is literally, I've coined it the shake it out method, where you stand up. And if you think of dogs, or you think of animals, or you think of deer that are getting chased, what they do after they play dead or they hide or they get away is they'll shake. And what that does is it completes the feedback loop, the sympathetic nervous response to come to a close. It shifts out the excess energy built up in the nervous system, which has nowhere else to go. It has to come up and out. Where you're suppressing it, it turns to poison. It gets worse over time. So having that experience where you're literally shaking it out, you're coming into the body rather than the top-down approach. Top-down approach tends to gaslight the self. If you're gaslighting the self, you can't actually heal. You're not ever acknowledging what is taking place in the present moment. And in that present moment, it is a profoundly powerful and beautiful energy that is anger. Anger is potent. It's beautiful.
I think when I said that I was trying to help them use time for it, because I love that reframe, and putting it more in an Eastern sense, because it is, both are so applicable to anybody's healing. And I genuinely am saddened by the fact that we almost strictly use a Western method. We do only use a strict Western method of treatment where I work. When I was talking to these kids directly, I think the context of it was use the time with regards to your altercations with peers, because like when I say that it's that lockdown facility, they get so sucked into that reality. And I'm so glad that you reframed it for the listeners, because they don't know what that Belfair world looks like. Thank you for that. That just made so much more sense than where I was going with it. But again, coming back to the question, do you have any advice for somebody who is trying to deepen their ability as an observer or in mindfulness? Do you have any advice for somebody who's trying to take that extra step backwards in their life and bird's eye view in?
Yes.
Go on.
My first big awareness to bring in is get connected with a coach or a mentor or a guide or a community that holds themselves true to a level of integrity that is doing what it is that you're looking to do. Because when you're surrounded by a tribe of individuals, or you're allowing yourself to energetically plug in to somebody who has mastered or has up-leveled a skill set or an awareness that you're looking to deepen into, you're accelerating the process. So it's this experience of saying, I need help, I will ask. And through that invitation, you're capable of making a transformation. You have the power to transform your life when you're ready. So what was your original question with that?
How do you suggest, or do you have any advice to the people who are trying to sharpen their skills in mindfulness as an observer of their own life in a present moment?
Thank you. Becoming aware of choosing to become aware of the present moment. And that's something that is so discussed in present day, but it's not something that I think many people fully understand, or at least I didn't fully understand until I was quite a bit into my practice.
Choosing to come into the present moment.
Choosing to come into the present moment
is not just choosing to focus your mind on what you're looking at and what your five senses can observe. It's actually completely letting go of what the future might hold and completely letting go of the past that you've had, and accepting yourself with unconditional love right there and then, and everything that you are sensing through your five senses, without that veil of separation and thinking that I am this and that is that. We are, and I am. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
It's easier to answer your question where I'm getting stuck. And it's funny because what I want to explain is actually that where we get stuck as a human species. This is where we get stuck, is the mental space.
Mm-hmm.
The this drive in our culture to put words where words cannot fully express. There's a difference between mentally conceptualizing something and fully embodying something. So to answer your question, I almost want to like lead a very quick guided somatic meditation.
Oh.
Because there's something so different than words versus actually experiencing it.
You said it so perfectly when you said there's a world of literal universe of difference between mentally conceptualizing something and fully embodying.
Mm-hmm.
May we?
We may. All right. So let's go ahead and close our eyes. And if you're listening, I invite you to take a moment to go ahead and pause. Pause whatever you're doing, if you're cooking or cleaning or walking around the house. Just pause if it feels good for you. And as you sit down, taking a big, deep belly breath in. The biggest breath that you've taken in all day. Breathing in through your nose. All the way in at the top. And on the exhale, relaxing your shoulders. And taking a moment to bring your awareness into your body. Allowing any noises that are going on around you to fall into the background. And gently guiding your awareness into the crown of your head. Bringing into your mind's eye where your hair is in time and space. Maybe even tuning in and feeling the sensation of your hair on your skin. Consciously relaxing the muscles of your forehead. Releasing any tension you're holding in your jaw. Guiding your shoulders away from your ears and rounding your posture back so you're opening up your heart center. Tuning into the temperature, the feeling of it on your skin, the sensation of it as it moves through your nose and hits the back of your throat. Seeing if you can feel the air moving into your lungs. Guiding your awareness down into your belly and consciously relaxing any tension that you're holding there. Releasing any stress you're holding in your hips. And guiding your awareness down your legs. Tuning in and feeling each muscle Tuning into your knees, your calves, and placing your feet flat on the floor, spreading your toes, feeling the ground beneath you. And just for this moment, giving yourself permission to just be where your feet are. Your to-do list will be there when we come back. The stress will be there to throw back on your shoulders if you want to. The tightness in your chest can remain if you choose to allow it. But for right now, the next 20 seconds, give yourself permission to just be here. And as you feel ready, begin gripping the ground with your toes, bringing some gentle movement into your shoulders or your hands, feeling each muscle contract and expand as you move. When you're ready, opening your eyes to a soft gaze. Maybe colors are brighter. Maybe you notice your heart rate is lower. You might feel more calm or at ease. Or in somebody who's chronically dysregulated, maybe you notice an increase in heart rate and nervousness. There is no one size fits all. Tuning in with you. How are you feeling? What are you feeling?
My temperature. Uncomfortably warm. Genuine frustration on some level. There is unconditional love within myself, for myself. And that exists simultaneously with the standards of my own ego. So as much as I was experiencing frustration, I was experiencing pure bliss and love. You're exactly where I'm at. Frustration lies in letting it be a frustration.
What feels good about the frustration?
What feels good about the frustration is it embodies enough anger to motivate me, and then just enough love at the same time. It's literally both. Very dualistic, meeting right in the middle. The frustration comes from not, and at the same time, feeling like I'm not living my truth, but at the same time doing my damn best to live my truth. Is that frustration or is that love? I'm very pleased with where I'm at, but I know I could be doing better.
What do you classify as better?
Happier. Flat out. More aligned through that happiness. Unconditionally loving myself is that alignment. Allotting time for the things that frustrate me, the human downfalls, right? Because we all have downfalls. We all have deadly sins. Allotting the time for those things, even to going an inch off my path recently, feels just, I don't know. It just it's not a release for me anymore like it used to be. It's not as much of a truth. It's the different. Not a coping mechanism anymore. It's a habit. I love it though. So, how does it fit? We're finding that puzzle piece. Frustration only came from my judgment towards myself for it not being that puzzle piece right now, damn it.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, it's the whole puzzle. Now is the puzzle factory.
There you go.
Yeah. I appreciate you walking me through that. I'm sure that you felt it felt interesting internally. It was very interesting for me. Couldn't quite tell. All through the meditation. Same time of no mental conversation and energetic inner conversation as I was following the meditation. Yeah.
I love that you had that.
Me too.
And so having an experience of something versus talking about it completely rewrites your entire experience of life.
So are you talking specifically about how I just had an energetic conversation within myself rather than a mental conversation within myself? Of course, there were mental words being spoken, but they were very limited in comparison to the shifts and changes that I felt within myself. Dealing with that inner frustration, and at the same time, I was literally going through that meditation too. It was dynamic. But can you rephrase your question? I'm sorry.
It wasn't a question.
Oh, what was it? I'm sorry.
I was sharing the difference between a mental understanding or a top-down approach versus an embodied experience, which is bottoms up. So a tops-down approach would be the experience of, oh, you're angry? You shouldn't be. Stop. Okay. I don't need therapy anymore. I'm good. It's not how it works. So the top-down approach is discussing, it's conversation, it's conceptualizing, it's logic, it's reason, and that definitely has its time or place.
And when you say top-down, mental impacting the body rather than the embodiment impacting the new neural pathways that you're laying for yourself.
Bingo. The analogy that I always give my community members or my clients is if you're having a panic attack and somebody comes up to you and says, just breathe, get the fuck out of my face before I punch you. That's top down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in reality, if you're somebody who has been practicing embodiment and presence and mindfulness, you know that the breath is the quickest way to tap into the nervous system. It's the quickest way to come back home to yourself. So in reality, what that person is saying, just breathe, that's actually the best guidance somebody can give. But top down, telling somebody who's in a PTSD or a trauma nervous system response or fight or flight, just breathe. If they don't have that embodied understanding of what that means, that goes right out the door.
Quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could very well become a target.
Exactly.
Because they're telling you what to do.
Yeah. So a lot of my work is focused on teaching people how to improve or how to gain, oftentimes for the first time, somatic awareness of their body.
Define somatic, if in the best way that you possibly can.
Somatic is the internal sense of what's going on inside of you.
Gotcha.
So a somatic understanding, you were aware of movements going on. I think you mentioned your stomach.
Yeah.
I know I had movements in that quick meditation in my stomach. So I had energy. This is where I tend to hold on to things. When the stomach is the spiritual digestive tract, essentially. So tuning in and observing, okay, what movements do I feel? Oh, there's tightness in my right shoulder. Can I figure out where the exact point is? Is there numbness anywhere in my body? Is there inflammation? Is there feel good, tingly sensations? What are you observing? That is the embodiment of what's going on inside.
Of your experience.
Of your inner experience. And your inner experience is then reflected externally. How you show up, how you hold yourself, what's going on.
As so within, so without. The top-down approach is pretty aggressive, can be. But what happens when it's not? You know what I'm saying? Because the embodiment process is extremely important, not only in being able to hold space for yourself, but your growth process, your evolution as a human being. What happens when you combine that embodiment of these processes with the positive thought processes too? Is it like a double rewiring of the hard drives in the heart and mind?
So now you're getting into neuroscience.
Yeah.
So neuroscience is the study of the brain. Essentially, the way that I explain it is like it's a computer hard drive. And observing, so here's where that embodied space comes from, because you have to be able to observe before you can make a shift. If you observe your thoughts in a pattern that creates a negative loop, from the neuroscience perspective, you can actually change that. So that is an approach where it's an embodied sense mixed with potentially top-down. Because you're catching it, conceptualizing it, observing it, changing it. It's called a pattern interrupt.
So would you say that I'm having a pattern interrupt with my cigarette smoking in terms of like recognizing that it does have some value to me in my life, and I'm trying to allot it in this puzzle piece of what daily balance looks like? I'm doing a pattern interrupt with my brain. Instead of shaming myself, instead of calling myself names and being angry at myself for having a vice such as smoking, I feel like I'm doing an exit loop or trying to rewire that. I definitely am rewiring that, but that's where the frustration truthfully lies. As if the listeners didn't know, now they know.
I believe that your intention is initiating a pattern interrupt, in the sense that there's the physiological and chemical components that go along with it, as well as habit. Habit is when an action has been done on repetition so many times that the body does it without real conscious thought. It's just sort of habitual. And then also addressing the root of what started the habit. So when you initially picked up a cigarette, or the times that you went to grab for one, what was the energy or intention behind it? Was it, I'm using the tobacco as the spiritual medicine that it is to cleanse my body and cleanse my being and bring grounding? Or am I grabbing for this cigarette because I'm stressed at work and I need to do something about it? So the intention behind everything begins to shift. And you may also be observing that in yourself as well. I don't know.
Oh, definitely.
Observing the intention behind when you go grab for one.
And I've actually been catching myself when it's not a conscious yes. When it is a habitual yes, actually setting it down.
Nice.
Walking away from it that way.
Nice.
It's nice. It is nice. You can really do anything that you want. This woman was in a wheelchair with Lyme disease, and look at her now. She's healing other people. Like, we create our own realities in so many ways, and I genuinely believe that if you want to be able to create your own reality for yourself and have that dream life, you have to be able to embody and positively talk top down. That is the fullest dynamic of being able to hold space for yourself. it not only gives the benefit of the observation, but the embodiment of the person itself. Your person, yourself, right? Being put in a space implies growth. Because you never take a plant out of a pot and put it into something bigger until its roots are at capacity. When you're given a different space, everything goes.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important, and I just want to kind of like recapture some of the things that you had mentioned at the beginning of when we first started talking about the importance of holding space. When you're with somebody who is going through anything, happiness, sadness, anger, depression, anxiety, they're in a place of transformation and possibly acceptance or a lack of acceptance of where they're at. Holding space, from what I recollect you saying, and definitely intertwine my own definition into this, holding space looks so much like witnessing that individual without your biases, expectations, or experiences being put onto them, and allowing yourself to be a mirror for them and them for you at the same time too.
Mm-hmm.
That invites compassion, and compassion is the one thing I think that is truly going to save the human race, because compassion invites lifting of that veil. No more separatism. Like, we aren't, like you said, we might look separate, but we ain't. We're all energy. The world needs more compassion, and the world needs more space. There's plenty of it, being shrunken down. Arms and hearts and minds wide open, por favor, everybody. That's all I want for everybody, is that type of experience through their consciousness, is a more developed or opened mind and heart space. Everybody deserves that.
And it all starts with you.
With me? All right, everybody go do it.
It starts
with the choice of, I want this change.
We can talk. So here's back to that top down. We can talk and conceptualize world peace. We can discuss the changes that need to take place. But unless you are actually choosing to do the work, choosing to integrate the unconscious into the conscious, choosing to feel the heavy emotions that aren't as enjoyable to feel, the changes that we talk about wanting to see in the world start by you actually acknowledging, witnessing, and loving yourself, because you are the universe.
The recognition that I am frees you. It freed me in a lot of sense. I couldn't agree with you more.